All. Today we're doing a practice called Big and Little. It's a kids yoga practice for kids ages 3 to 103. And it's a practice that is great for kids and parents to do at home when you have time to fill, which I'm sure you may have a little bit of these days, more so than usual. We start our Big and Little practice with some gratitude and with these two different sizes of balls. So at my house, we might pass around a little ball and talk about little things that we're grateful for, like the cupcakes that we just baked, or having a warm blanket to cuddle up underneath while we watch TV. And then we might pass or roll a big ball when we talk about the big things that we're grateful for, like having a family dinner, or having a warm bed to sleep in at night, being able to go where we need to go, and having a car, even though we can't go everywhere we want to go right now. So it's a nice gratitude practice for being at home, to use something small to talk about the little things that you're grateful for, and have something big to talk about those big things that you're grateful for. And that's something that we do in our kids yoga practice at Namaste. Let's begin today with a little breath and a big breath. So the little breath is called bunny breath. And if you were with us a couple of sessions ago, we did bunny breath. And as it is Easter Sunday, this coming Sunday, bunny breath is very appropriate right now. So bunny breath is a short inhale through your belly and a short, brief exhale out through your nose. And if you put your hand on your belly, you should be able to feel your belly rise and that short breath come out through your nose in a really short puff. So I'm going to come a little closer so you can hear what that sounds like. So if you put your hand on your belly, take a little breath in and a short breath out. And you can do that really fast. As many times as you like. It's called bunny breath. Usually a round of about 20 to 25 is plenty. And let it go. So that is bunny breath. It's also called Kapalabhati breath that you would find in an adult practice, but for our kids practice today, we'll call it bunny breath. All right, so the next breath we're moving into is a 3-part breath. And I brought a balloon with me today for practice. I want you to envision that your belly, your ribs, and your heart are like a great big giant balloon. And when you're blowing up that balloon, that's your breath coming in. So your belly should get really big as you breathe into your belly, your ribs, and your chest. As you let all that breath go, everything softens and settles. And the balloon goes all the way back to neutral. So again, we're coming in, the breath comes in. A little pause at the top. And we let all of that breath go, and the breath goes out. And hopefully it doesn't sound like that for you. So let's bring a hand to the belly and a hand to the heart, and we'll start with that 3-part breath. So breathe into your lower hand, belly, between your hands, ribs, top of the chest, top hand, pause, and let all that breath go, just like you're emptying out the balloon. Inhale, belly, ribs, chest, pause, and let all of that go. Let's close our eyes and take 3 more of those breaths. Inhale, belly, ribs, heart, pause. Exhale, let all of that breath go. Do that again, belly, ribs, chest, pause, and let all of that breath go. Belly, ribs, chest, pause, and let all of that breath go. And release your hands, close your eyes, and offer gratitude for something little in your life. It It can be as tiny as a chocolate chip cookie. And then offer gratitude for something big in your life. Maybe it's your pet or your parent or your house. And then we'll blink the eyes open and we'll begin moving with our practice today. So the first pose that we'll come into is called rabbit pose. And rabbit pose is a teeny tiny version of a child's pose. So this is the little part of the pose. I want you to bring your hands next to your heels, your forehead down to the mat, and curl up in a teeny tiny shape. Breathing in and out here, let your body settle and make yourself as tiny can be. Begin to slowly curl yourself up. The next version of this pose is a bigger version, and it's called child's pose. So I want you to make yourself a little bit bigger so your knees are a little bit wider. Walk your hands forward so your shape is a little bigger, and come up onto the tips of your fingers. Bring your forehead down to the floor. 3 breaths in and out here. And slowly begin to bring yourself back up. The next pose that we'll take is called puppy pose, and it's the little version of downward facing dog. So first we'll come into the tiny version, then we'll come into the big version. So for puppy pose, bring your knees directly underneath your hips and walk your hands forward. Just like your dog would stretch in the morning sun, my puppy does this every morning before we go outside together. Her name is Penny. And we stretch really long. You can bring your chin to the floor and look at your thumbs, or you can bring your forehead to the floor and really get those hips up high to the sky. This is a little bit of a back bend. Deep breaths in and out. Stretch your spine, stretch your arms on your side, and make some space. And slowly walk your hands back into table pose. Walk your hands forward so you're in a plank with your knees down. Now we'll take the big version of the pose, and it's called downward facing dog. Curl your toes, lift your seat, stretch your spine in all directions, stretch your legs down into the earth, and get really long in this V shape from hands. Wiggle your puppy tail up to your hips, from your hips down into your heels, keeping your knees soft. And if you want to give a little bark, in your downward facing dog, please feel free to do that and shake your puppy tail. 2 more breaths here. And 1 more breath here. And we'll slowly come down and release that puppy pose. Take a pose that is either tiny or that is big. Take a rabbit pose, take a puppy pose, or take a child's pose. And come down and curl in, come back to your breath. I'm going to take rabbit pose. And slowly bring yourself back up to sit. I'm going to make sure I keep myself honest and that we're doing all the poses I have on the sheet in case anyone wants it at the end of the practice. The next pose that we're doing is called low lunge or dragon lunge, and the next lunge we'll come up to is high lunge. So we'll take the little version of the pose and then we'll take the big version of the pose. So the little version of the pose looks like this. You'll come into your table and you'll step forward with 1 foot between your hands. So you're coming into this low lunge where your back knee is on the floor. This is the tiny version of the pose. We're going to add a little twist to the pose. So stretch your arms all the way up And then take one hand forward, one hand back. So you're looking towards your bent knee. With your next breath in, lift up, lift your heart up, and we'll switch sides. Bring the other foot forward and the other knee back. Inhale, raise your arms. Again, this is the tiny version of the pose. And then we're twisting towards that front leg. Take a breath in here and a breath out. If you want to roar like a dragon, you can do that. Rawr, imagine you have fiery dragon breath. Inhale, stretch up. And exhale, bring your hands down. And we'll switch again. So bring the other foot forward. This time we'll lift that back knee and come into the big version of the pose. Take a breath in here. Your knee is lifted. This time we'll bring those hands down and lift the opposite hand of the leg that is forward. Actually, it's the same hand of the leg that is forward. Take a little twist. And slowly release. Now this time we can jump switch because the back knee is lifted. So get some spring in your bottom here, and we'll hop that forward. Taking the other foot forward, other foot back, rise all the way up. This is our high lunge. This is the big version of the pose. Take a breath in here, bring your hands down, and we'll twist. Again, lifting the same arm as we have the front leg. And take another breath in here. And as you exhale, slowly release that hand and bring it back down to the floor. The next two poses we'll take are called Cobra Pose and Upward Facing Dog. Cobra Pose is the little version of the back bend. Upward Facing Dog is a bigger version of the back bend. So let's do it together. Let's come all the way down to the floor. I'm going to move my ball out of the way here if I get it to stick. Get it to stick over there. All right. Coming all the way down to the floor, place your hands underneath your shoulders, wiggle your hips so you're grounded, draw your shoulders back and lift your chest up a tiny bit. We'll do a little snake breath here to come down. So take a breath in and hiss it down. Let's do that again. Press down. Little tiny lift up, and we'll hiss it down. Let's take the bigger version of this back bend. With the bigger version of the back bend, we're lifting our hips and our heart away from the floor, completely lifting and hovering our hips up and off the ground. So for this version, I want you to bring your hands back a little further. Tuck your elbows in. Imagine you have little wings and you're tucking those wings in. Anchor down into your feet and totally lift your hips up and your knees up off the floor. Take a breath in here, stretch your chest forward, full breath out. And take another deep breath in. And slowly release, come all the way back to the floor. Nice job. Curl your toes. Pop back up to table, and we'll step forward this time. We'll take a couple of standing poses, and the first one is called Baby Dancer. So we'll do the little version of the pose, and then we'll come into the big version of the pose. So I'm going to hold on to a wall for one side, just so you know you don't have to balance in the middle of the room. You can use the wall, or maybe you and a parent want to hold hands and do this pose together. So take your hand to the wall, same hand, same foot, stays grounded, reach back for the other ankle. And this is called Baby Dancer. So we're keeping that heel tucked in towards the seat. We're keeping our knees really close together. If you want to reach away from the wall, you can do that, but keep everything really close. So heel to the seat, knee to knee, get long from your foot to your hand. And hang out and breathe. And then you can do the other side. So bring the other foot down, bring the other foot in, Baby Dancer, other side. And we'll stretch up with the other foot and hand up and down. And breathe, again, keeping your heel close to your seat, knee close to your knee. And slowly release. Give your legs a little wiggle, a little shake out. Step down with that first foot and first hand. Reaching down into the earth, up to the sky. Bring your heel in towards your seat again. Baby dancer. Now we'll come into the full shape of the pose. So maybe you can reach your hand forward and kick your foot back, making a bigger shape. So we already did the little version. Now we're coming into that great big version of dancer's pose. And then bring yourself back to the floor. Root down into the earth with the other foot. Reach up to the sky with the other hand. Bring the other foot in towards your seat. Kick back into that hand and reach forward and back. Hand and foot. Whoa. Keep your balance. Stay with your breath. One more breath here. And slowly release and shake it all out. Shake out your arms, shake out your legs. We're coming back down to the ground for table pose. So setting up with the hands under the shoulders, knees under the hips, we'll take two versions of half moon. The first version is a teeny tiny version of half moon from table pose. So coming down to the earth, extend back through your left leg and begin to stack your left hip on top of your right hip. Now, for some of you, you might be able to keep those right toes right in the middle of your mat, but it might be a little easier to make a kickstand behind you so you can come up just like this. So maybe this is your half moon pose. Beautiful, right? And breathe right here, one leg extended. I got a little kickstand, or I wouldn't have to have a kickstand. I could bring it in. It's a little harder, so maybe the kickstand is easier. Maybe you want to reach back for your ankle and peel your heart open. And then release everything back down to table. I'm going to switch sides so you don't have to look at my backside. So coming into table, we'll stretch the other leg straight back. Come up and stack that top hip. Turn your toes out and maybe kickstand that underside foot. Maybe you'll just reach that hand up to the sky and extend out through the sole of the foot, coming into a little version of half moon, a little more grounded. Maybe you want to come into the sweet version, sugar cane, and stretch your heart and your hips open. Nice job. And release the hand and the foot and bring everything back down to the ground. So we'll step up. Now we're going to do the great big version of half moon pose. So this one comes from standing. We'll come into a forward bend. If you have a block or you have something that you want to bring the earth up a little higher, you could use that block. You could ask your parent for a block, or you can use a book or a can of soup. So bring your hand to a block. Just like we did with the little version of half moon on our knees, we'll swing a leg back. Remember doing that on the first version? We'll swing a leg back and stack our hips up again. And turn the chest. Whoa. A little tippy today. You can use the wall too. I'm on carpet, that's hard. And then stretch your arm up to the sky. See, I can't keep my balance. I'm going to use the wall. Carpet makes everything harder. So I'm going to use the wall. I'm going to put my foot on the wall and stretch up and down. That makes it a lot easier for me. Might make it easier for you too. Or you can have somebody come and hold your hip. And then bring it back down, and we'll do the other side. So we'll come and stand on the other side. You can bring a block underneath your hand or bring your hand to the earth. And then swing that other leg back and stack your hip. Bring your hand to your waist. Maybe extend your hand to the sky. And again, even here you can do that sugar cane, that sweet version of the pose where you reach back for your ankle. And again, you can have a parent come and hold your hip so it's easier for you. Peel your heart open. Again, maybe you're going to lose your balance here, and that's totally okay. And rise back up to stand. So we had our little version of half moon from our knees, and we had our big version of half moon from standing. The next pose that we're doing together is called half split and full split. So some of you, if you take gymnastics or dance, every time I say in class, we're going to do a half a split to stretch our hamstrings. You're like, I'm doing full split, right? So I'm going to show you both. We're going to do the little version, the half split, and then we'll do a big version and a full split. So again, if you have a block, you might want to use that. Bring yourself back into a table pose. So I'm going to turn to the side so you can see what I'm doing with my hips here. So if you step a foot forward between your hands, you're in low lunge. And again, if you've got a block, if you're a little older or less flexible, you might want to use your block here. And extend your hips back, pop your toes up, and stretch your chest forward. Now you're getting a hamstring stretch without going into a full split. So we're just doing the little version of the pose here. So you've got a long leg, you're stretching the back of the leg, and you're stretching your heart as if you could reach it beyond your toes. Now, this is the little version of the pose. If you want to take the big or the full version of the pose, you can start to slide that foot forward and wiggle back through the other knee and maybe come pretty close to the floor. Maybe if you're a little less flexible, you can bring a block underneath that front leg and rest on that. And maybe you can lift your arms up to the sky and come into the full version. So we had our little half split here, which is perfectly lovely. And then we had our big full split. So let's try that on the other side. Let's bring that other foot forward. We're coming into that low lunge, and then we'll sink those hips back. Again, if you have less flexible hamstrings, if you're an athlete or maybe a parent who is doing this with your child, come into this little version of splits pose, this half version. So again, flexing those toes back, stretch your heart forward and open, and maybe that's your version of the pose. Maybe you want to come into the great big version of Hanuman, of splits pose. And maybe you'll slide that foot forward. Maybe you'll tuck a block underneath that front leg. And maybe you'll lift your arms up to the sky, and maybe not. Maybe you'll just stay in that first version of the pose. So whatever version you're in, let's come into that with a couple more breaths here. And then we will tuck that knee back in. Let's take one of those little poses that we took earlier in the practice. So either rabbit pose or puppy pose. So bring yourself into that teeny tiny seed-like shape again. Or maybe into that puppy pose, the little version of dog pose. And walk forward. Hang out here for about 5 breaths. Take one more breath in and out before you slowly curl up to a seated pose. And we'll come on up. The last pose that we're doing together today is called bridge pose or wheel pose. And it too is a back bend, just like our cobra pose and our upward facing dog pose. So the first pose is called bridge pose. Again, parents, if you're doing this with your kiddo and you have a block and you want to come into the supported version of bridge, by all means do that. You can also slide a pillow or a couch cushion underneath your low back. So the bridge pose looks like this. Slide your heels in so it's close to your seat. Hands come next to the heels, so maybe you can even graze your heels. And you'll press down into your feet. Snuggle your shoulder blades behind your heart. Press down into the feet, the shoulders, and the head to peel those hips away from the floor. Belly, ribs, and heart. Now you can keep these little robot arms. You can interlace your hands underneath you. Or you can, again, take that block and tuck it underneath you. The block has 3 levels, so you can bring it to the lowest level or maybe the middle level. If you're bringing it to the highest level, you might have to come up on your tippy toes to sneak it underneath your sacrum, and we'll hang out here. Now for some of you, I know little boys and girls who are flexi bendy and maybe do gymnastics or dance or just enjoy doing a big back bend, wheel pose might be in your wheelhouse. So you might want to place your hands underneath your shoulders
Elbows in, armpits down. Come up on the balls of the feet and your tippy toes to press all the way up into a great big back bend. So this is the start. This is our little back bend in bridge pose. Just like cobra was our little back bend and upward facing dog, our big back bend. Now you can come all the way up into a great big back bend and stretch down into the earth with your hands and your feet. Stretch up into the sky with your belly. Take a big breath in. Woo! And come back down, either into your bridge pose, your supported bridge pose, or bring yourself all the way down to the floor. And we'll stretch those legs long into a Shavasana. Bring your hands back to your belly and to your heart. And come back to that big three-part breath. So close your eyes and imagine in your mind that your belly is that balloon again. So imagine that yellow balloon that I blew up and released the air from. And every time you breathe in, imagine that yellow balloon inflating and getting really big. And imagine that yellow balloon deflating, and let all the breath go. Again, that big balloon, bring all the breath in, and let all the breath go. Air goes out of the balloon. I'm going to be really quiet, and I want you to take 3 more big breaths, just like that, envisioning the yellow balloon. Begin to wiggle your fingers and wiggle your toes. Curl your knees in towards your chest. Make yourself into the shape of a teeny tiny egg. And then imagine that you're a little chicken popping out of that egg. And I want you to stretch your legs long and stretch your arms long. Imagine that you've just freed yourself from the shell. And then one more time, let's curl into the teeny tiny egg-like shape. And inhale, stretch your legs long and your arms long. Bend your knees and roll yourself onto your right side. Curl up there in a teeny tiny seed-like shape. One more time. Press your hands down into the earth and rise all the way up to a seated pose. Thank you so much for joining me for Big and Little Yoga today. If you would like some coloring pages that go with this practice, and if you would like the practice to do at home as a family or to do with your kids, I would invite you to email us at namasteyogaohio@gmail.com. Again, that's namasteyogaohio@gmail.com. Have a very happy Easter weekend, and we hope to see you at Kids Yoga very soon. Namaste.